In this lesson, we're going to look at how to use matrices to solve word problems. But before we can do that, we're going to take a look at what a matrix equation is. If you take a look at this equation right here, you see that it involves two matrices and an unknown matrix. Remember, I had mentioned when we started with matrices that matrices are usually named with capital letters. This variable here represents a matrix. And this whole statement here is considered a matrix equation. We have a matrix and we're adding to it an unknown matrix, and it needs to equal this matrix over here. So you can use the addition and subtraction properties of equality of matrices that we spoke about in the last video, or the very first video in this section, to solve matrix equations. So let's take a look at a word problem. In this word problem, we're being asked which team had the best record for the second half of the season. And we're given the wins and losses of each team for the first half of the season in this table. And we're given the overall records for each team for the season in this table here. And we can take the records for wins and losses for each team and represent them as a matrix. And as we all know, to get the overall records, you would add up the wins of the first season with the wins of the second season to get the total wins for the season. And you would add up the losses for the first half of the season with the losses of the second half of the season to get the total losses for the entire season. Okay, so I represented that here as a matrix equation. You can take a look at the values in this matrix, and they are equal to the wins for team 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the first half of the season. The second column here represents the losses for each of those teams in the first half of the season. And in order to calculate the records for the entire season, we need to add to it the wins and losses of the second half of the season, which is going to be represented by matrix A here. And then that is going to equal the total wins and losses for the entire season. And you can see I duplicated this table right here in this matrix right here. In order to solve this, we're going to have to subtract this matrix from both sides of our matrix equation like we would for a regular equation involving just a single number and a variable. So let's go ahead and subtract this matrix from both sides. And we would move this matrix over here using subtraction. And then the matrix on the left-hand side would go away. It would cancel out after you subtracted it. So I'm just going to go ahead and exit out over here. And now we're left with the matrix equation that we can solve for. Matrix A equals the record for the entire season minus the records for the first half of the season. This operation here will give us the records for the second half of the season. So let's go ahead and figure out which team had the best record in the second half of the season. So matrix A, remember when we subtract matrices, we're subtracting the corresponding elements. So it's going to be 53 minus 30, which is 23. Team A had 23 wins. 29 minus 11, which is 18. And it had 18 losses. Team 2 had 67 wins minus 29 wins, which is, let's see, 67 minus 30 is 37 plus 1 is 38 wins total. And then 15 minus 12 is 3. Then we have 58 and subtract 25 from that, and we get 33 wins for team 3. 24 losses minus 16 losses is 8 losses. So during the second half of the season, team 3 had 8 losses. 61 wins for team 4 minus 24 is 37 wins for team 4 during the second half of the season. 21 minus 17, 4 losses for team 4. So it looks like team 2 and team 4 are fairly close, but I think team 2 wins for the second half of the season. Team 2's the big winner. So that's how you use matrices in a matrix equation to solve a word problem.